Hey everybody, welcome back to Better Workdays. I am your host, Andy Morrison. This week's episode is for anyone who runs meetings and anyone who has had brainstorming mess your meeting up. If you have tried to run brainstorming and it went off the rails, or it didn't get you the results you wanted, or it made the meeting go way over time, this is going to help you. Now, if you have been sitting through bad meetings and bad brainstorming, this episode could also help you if you get it in front of the right audience. Who's running those brainstorms and those meetings for you? Can you give them this episode and say, hey, I watched this and I learned a few things about brainstorming. What do you think? Might be a way to open up the conversation of them saying, oh, maybe there's something different I could do here. And you want to try something different. If you're running meetings and you feel like you're boring people to death or that the meeting's a waste of time, you got to do something about that. Because let me ask you this. If in your organization, this universal hatred for meetings has kind of just been accepted as the reality of the situation, as if there's something inherently wrong with meetings. If that's the case, then you've got a lot of people in your organization spending a lot of time in meetings thinking to themselves, good God, what am I doing here? Why am I in this meeting? What might I be doing if I weren't here? How could I be more productive right now? And that's a terrible feeling. Now, ask yourself this. If you think that's just the way of the world, if your employees disagree with you and they think there's a better way to be running meetings, which there is, how long will it take before they go from sitting in those bad meetings wondering, what am I doing in this bad meeting? How long will it take before they're sitting there and thinking to themselves, what am I doing in this organization? What am I doing in an organization that is set up in such a way that part of my job, one of the core expectations of me, is that I waste a lot of time in meetings I don't need to be in? And might there be organizations out there that I could go work for where that wouldn't be the case? The best people, the ones you want to keep, will eventually start thinking that. They will eventually start saying, why am I in this organization if this organization requires me to spend so much of my time in unnecessary or poorly run meetings? Okay? It's fun. I love complaining about meetings as much as anybody else, but it's a serious problem and it doesn't need to be. One thing you can do as a leader in your organization is make sure you and other leaders are trained on how to properly run meetings. Big part of that means holding meetings only when necessary. The second part means when it's necessary, you plan the meeting properly. And the third part is when the meeting is being run, you own it and you facilitate it and you run that meeting so that you make sure it matters. And meetings matter when they accomplish the meeting objectives and when they do so in the least amount of time possible and when the participants are satisfied with the meeting. That's the three things you need to shoot for in order to run meetings that matter. You could, imagine if you consistently had people saying, yes, the meetings I attend are worth my time. Imagine what that would do for culture, morale, retention. Meetings, it's fun to complain about them, but they're a big deal. Now, this episode is going to help anyone who's running meetings, and especially if you're running brainstorming, because in my experience and what people tell me in workshops, brainstorming is a frequent offender, okay, a repeat offender in contributing to bad meetings. I think where people go wrong with brainstorming is that it's such a kind of loosey-goosey thing. You know, it's, oh, we're going to throw ideas at the wall. No such thing as a bad idea. Just shout it out and we'll capture it, right? It's improvisational. There's not I think people mistakenly think that because you're just throwing ideas out there without restraint, no one's analyzing them, no one's giving feedback on the spot. That makes them think the whole thing can be improvisational, and it can't. That's where brainstorming goes wrong. You have to have a process and you have to have some key things you absolutely need to have in place if you want to properly brainstorm. And that's what we're looking at this week on Better Workdays. 5 things you absolutely need if you want to properly brainstorm. First thing you absolutely need, let's look at number 5 on this list. Brainstorms need a leader. They need someone to own them. That means before the meeting is held, you have considered whether brainstorming is a tool that you need to utilize during that meeting. You're trying to generate as many ideas as possible from your team. That's the purpose of brainstorming. I have heard of people who have said, well, I've got 3 or 4 ideas, options I want the team to consider. I'm going to push pretty heavily for these, but I don't want them to feel cut out. I want their input and I want an engaging meeting. Everyone says the meetings are boring. So I'm going to start by throwing it out for some brainstorming and generating ideas. Why would you do that if you've got 3 or 4 ideas that you are going to present and push the team towards? Just do that. Don't waste their time with the brainstorm for the sake of engagement. It needs to be productive. There needs to be a reason behind it. Don't brainstorm if you don't need to. So as the leader of the brainstorm and the owner of it, you are making sure it's a tool that's being used when it should be used. And if it's going to be used, it is on the meeting agenda. Do not improvisationally brainstorm. All right. I'm not going to say never, but generally, it's something that needs to have thought behind it. And that means somebody needs to own it and somebody needs to lead it from the beginning. And from there, your brainstorms need a goal. The goal is not just to generate a list of ideas. What ideas do you need and why do you need them? So I'll give you a real-world example from Real Custom Training. I'm organizing a roundtable with some of our client organizations here in Northeastern Connecticut. And I want to find out from them what workshops we are not currently offering that would be helpful to them over the course of the next 5 years. That sounds like a pretty good goal for a brainstorm. Let me tell you why it might be a good goal, but it could be an even better goal. Let's say I run with that prompt for the brainstorm. All right, everybody, I need your ideas. What workshops could we offer that would be most helpful to your employees over the next 5 years? I'm sure if I did that, I would get a good list of valuable intel, a good list of workshops, and a good list of needs that these companies see their people having over the next 5 years. That's all valuable information, but it may not all be totally valuable specifically to Real Custom Training. Real Custom Training, we offer leadership and management and supervisory development programming. We're helping people develop soft skills, interpersonal skills, people skills, okay, communication skills. So if a company on the list says, well, we're going to really need training in this new software that we're all going to be using soon, or we could really use AI training, right? They might identify valid needs and valid ideas for workshops that could help meet those needs, but Real Custom Training is not the best provider to give them those workshops. And if that's the case, then that list is not as valuable to me as it could be if I had refined my goal for the brainstorm by just a little bit. So with that in mind, I would refine the goal and say to the companies, hey, let's reflect first. Here's how we've helped you. We've helped you develop frontline supervisors. We've helped you develop team leads and shift leads. We've helped your middle managers develop. We've even helped some of your senior executive team develop skills that are helping them. Here's all the ways Real Custom Training has helped you. So let's remember, that's our wheelhouse. We're working with supervisors, managers, and leaders on communication and people skills. With that in mind, what additional workshops within that wheelhouse could we offer that would be helpful to your people over the next 5 years? If I were to refine it as such, I would end up with a list that is much more likely to exclusively contain ideas that Real Custom Training could actually act on and be in a position to develop and execute for our clients, because we made sure that we gave them a good and specific goal for our brainstorm. So brainstorms need a goal, and you as the brainstorm leader need to be the one to predetermine what that goal is going to be. Next, brainstorms need a process. Like I said at the beginning, brainstorming feels loosey-goosey. It shouldn't be. You need a process. You need rules for the brainstorm, and you need to have it all written out for yourself. You need to be the one coming into the game with the instruction manual, and you are the only one who has read it. And you are the one who is there to make sure that that process gets followed. So, some ideas for you on process. 1, take a workshop with us. Running meetings that matter, or problem solving and decision making. We give you a formal process to use for brainstorming. But I'll tell you, I take it from IDEO. Okay, look up IDEO. The company IDEO has tons of resources out there on formal brainstorming process that you can use. You want to make sure you do things like remind people, we're going to go over the prompt, and then you're going to spit out ideas. And I'm going to capture as many of your ideas as I can up on the whiteboard. Nobody is going to critique an idea. We are simply going to shout ideas out. And if you're responding to someone else's idea, it's because you're building on it, not because you're analyzing it, not because you're trying to poke holes in it or say why it's impossible. We're not doing any of that yet. We will get to that later. Right now, we're just spitting out as many ideas as possible. All right, things like that. You need to be the one having a process laid out, explaining that process to everybody, and then facilitating that process and making sure it is followed. The process is how you're going to get the result that you want. Number 2, along those lines, at times when you're running the brainstorm, you're going to have to be the referee, okay? When a brainstorm's going well, people can get excited, which is good. You want that energy. But when people get excited, they're less likely to follow the rules that you laid out. For example, they might start critiquing each other's brainstorms. Or someone might throw out an idea that's so exciting, everybody wants to talk about that idea and how they could implement it. That's all good, but you need to stick to your process. Put a pin in that. Circle back to it later. Make a note to yourself. All right, this is the one that really got people jazzed up. We're going to make sure we talk about that later. But for now, remember, we are just spitting out ideas. You've got to make sure you keep them in the lane, okay? Keep them within the guidelines, within the process that you have laid out. Every proper brainstorm needs a referee. And then lastly, brainstorms need action. What is going to happen with this list that you've generated, this list of ideas? In my case, if I were to do the brainstorming session with my client companies, I would frequently, after the fact, update that group on how their input is helping us develop new programs. That way they know, it wasn't just Andy bringing us in and running a brainstorming exercise because he just wanted an excuse to see all of us because he's a sad, lonely man. No, they won't be thinking that. They'll be thinking, hey, real custom training. They really, okay, look at this. Oh, that's my idea. Hey, I suggested that idea. And look, they've got a new workshop along those lines. You want your people to know that this all led to something. Because if it didn't lead to something, then why did you do it? And I don't say that jokingly. I know it seems obvious, well, why would I do it if it doesn't lead anywhere? But I know you have sat through brainstorming that didn't seem to lead anywhere. You don't want that to be the case. With brainstorming or anything you're making your people sit through, they need to know why it mattered. And it matters when it leads to action. So make sure you update people on what is being done with the list of ideas that they generated. And you can even take this further. When we run our problem solving and decision making workshop at Real Custom Training, brainstorming's part of it. But then we help people take that list of ideas they just generated and work with a group to facilitate a consensus exercise. So let's say you're working with your team and you're asking for ideas on how to solve a particular problem, and you've got 30 ideas up there. Now you're going to work with your team on categorizing those ideas, maybe coming up with a consensus on the top 5, and then a consensus on the top 3, and maybe then a consensus on the top 1. And then you're going to assign roles on executing that one idea that your team has generated and agreed is the best idea to solve the challenge that you wanted to solve. Right? Make it lead to action. That is the best way to help people see that the brainstorm was a worthwhile endeavor. And maybe then they'll come around to the fact that brainstorms aren't bad. Poorly run brainstorms are bad. But you won't be poorly running brainstorms ever again because you listened to this episode of Better Workdays. And if you want a deeper dive into brainstorming, facilitating meetings, basically how to help us in the war against bad meetings, come take a workshop with us, okay? If you're in Northeastern Connecticut, go to realcustomtraining.com, look at the schedule for the Level Up Leadership Program. Level 3, Learning to Lead, has 2 workshops that incorporate brainstorming. One is Running Meetings That Matter. 2 is the Problem Solving and Decision Making Workshop. That program is available for companies to sponsor their employees into. So if you watched this and you said, that was pretty good advice, I could probably use a whole workshop on this type of thing to help run better meetings, ask your company to sponsor you into the Level Up Leadership Program. If you are listening or watching from outside Northeastern Connecticut, still go to the website, look at the Level Up Leadership Program, and then contact us about private group training, because we can bring that program directly to you, either on-site at your facility or online, live, interactive with your people. So go to realcustomtraining.com if you'd like to learn more about how to properly brainstorm and how to run meetings that truly matter. Because let me tell you, if you want your team to build a statue of you in the break room, you will eliminate bad meetings in your organization. They will love you. You'll be the best boss on the planet if you can do that. And hey, all it takes is a little bit of learning and a little bit of effort consistently over time, and you can do it. Real Custom Training can help. That's it for Better Workdays, everybody. Thank you for listening. I will be back next week. And you know what? One last plea to everybody. Let your coworkers, let your colleagues, let everybody know about Better Workdays. Numbers are looking good. A lot of engagement. I've actually got people in the community saying, hey, I like the podcast, which really means the world to me. And I would like more of that. Okay, so do it for me and my vanity and my incessant need for external validation. Okay, help me out. Let people know about Better Workdays. But we do appreciate the feedback. It's great to know this stuff is helping. And I'm trying to have more of a focus on things like this, common crap we all run into at work that is just a skill gap. It's just a skill gap. It's a symptom of a skill gap. Bad meetings, bad brainstorming. It's a symptom of a skill gap. We got a little bit of medicine that can help cure it, okay? All right, thanks for listening, everybody. I'll see you next week on Better Workdays.